little bit of our smaller call, but everybody watches back on Facebook because it's midday for a lot of people. But we do one for our East Coast folks, and then our West Coast folks got a little left out. And the whole premise is around systems and models. Let me turn. I'm going to mute everybody, guys. Just going through this time. And I thought to myself, why not bring on two of my favorite leaders? Because I don't know about everybody else on this call, but my leadership is being tested probably the most that it ever has in my leadership career. And so I said, I'll have Lucas on this morning and I'll have Seth midday, and I'll just have the best day ever. So Seth, I'm just going to let you open it up, let you start the conversation, share for as long as you want. I'm sure most people on this call are just here to hear you. So take it away, buddy.
That sounds like a great opening. I had no idea what you wanted me to talk about. I thought I was talking about the alphabet train behind me.
The alphabet train. How many do you have at home right now?
This is my actual real estate office. I work with the alphabet train in the background. So no, I hear you on leadership being tested. It certainly is a very, very difficult time and a very interesting time, right? That we're in. And I'm just, I think you know me, somebody was trying to kick me out. I'm a keen observer of leadership, and it's something that I've failed forward a lot. We've talked about many times over the years around that. And I'm really watching some interesting patterns, right? And it's so much related to how we are as humans, right? From denial to over-optimism to and even people's observation, right? So for an example, I tend to speak brutal truth and facts, right? You know that. And I was even confronted from some of my closest people, even my wife, of like, you're on the negative train, like you're sending out the negative news. And I said, what makes you think I think it's negative, right? It's news. So now, like, even when I send that, like great example. And so I've been talking a lot about the economics and the shift and exactly what's happened, right? I've been talking about shift for a year, because I thought it was probably going to hit last year, and I didn't believe it would hit this year, because it usually doesn't happen in an election cycle. Because the incumbents tend to flip every switch they can to pad the economy and to stay in office. So it's rare that anything would ever happen in an election year. So then it was like probably next year, right? And this horrendous virus has brought it to us sudden, fast, and in a way that nobody could have ever seen, and in a very unfortunate way. Yet the truth is, it's just the next site from there's two pieces, right? Is there's the virus, and we can put that on the shelf for a second and talk about the economics of it. And that's not to downplay the virus. That's obviously significantly more important. As I told my team today, when I'm saying, like, go virtual, be 100% virtual. It doesn't even matter what the law says, just be virtual. Find a new way to do business. Economies cycle back. Your health is not guaranteed to cycle back in this thing. So why risk it, right? There's no transaction that's worth risking anybody's health. Economies cycle back. Your health may not. So the health is the key piece, but then when we talk about the economics of it, it's like when we speak about the indicators and we speak about go do this, go cut the expenses, go do it, right? All this messaging that, and Keller Williams has been so good about getting out there about, what to do, what the right tactics are. And as a leader and as support, like how we empower people to take the right appropriate action right now, because it's very different than what we had to do 60 days ago. I've had people respond of like, whoa, fear or faith, negative or positive. And I'm like, why is it either? For me, it's just next. So in other words, like, there's 4 real estate markets. There's the up market, there's the declining market, there's the rising market, or the bottom market, and then the rising market, right? And then it happens again. And they always go in order. It's impossible to skip because it's all cyclical. So there's only 4 cycles. The peak, going down, the bottom, going back up. And then it's the peak, and then it's going down, then it's the bottom, and it's going back up, right? So it's not a good market or a bad market, it's the next market. Does that make sense? So as a leader, I think the very first message we have to get out to people is the brutal truth of the real estate market is we're in the next market. Like there's no economic indicator that would suggest that it's possible for the snapback. Like we're not in a hang tight 90 days, we're going to go back to normal. Mathematically speaking, short of a miracle, that's not going to happen. And like this morning, and I kept telling people, it's like, wait till, Thursday, we're going to have another dose of economic news called the jobs report, right? 6.7 million new filings last week, 3.3 million the week before that, 690 something or 85,000 being the all-time record. So last week puts us past a Great Depression level, right? And you hear that, oh, there you go. So the question for you is that negative? It's sad. It's not, it's sad, yet from an economic standpoint, it's the next market. And so my first role as a leader is to empathize with the people's emotion that I lead and that I work with and that I serve. Is what are you going through? How are you doing? What's going through your mind? How are you feeling about all this? Like, what are you telling yourself? What are people telling you? How are you doing? Because by the way, with this thing, can that change every day? I mean, it has for me. I mean, some mornings I'm not good. I don't know about you guys. Some nights I'm not good. Right. And so you might have a person who's good right now, and then by tonight they're not good, and you don't check on them tomorrow. Am I the only one that goes through that? Is that? It's like our emotions have 4 cycles too, right? Peak, and that could be in 1 hour that we go through all those, right? So that's number one. And then number 2 is, how do we get to reality? Because only in reality can we then make the right appropriate decision, right? In business, denial, when things change, denial is the key to failure, right? The key to losing. And the truth is, we're in the next cycle. I saw somebody, like literally right before we got on, Heather Jennings posted on Facebook the Stockdale paradox from Good to Great. I wonder if I can, I actually pulled it up just in case we want to look at it. And it's not a clean, it's not real, it's a tiny image. So I blew it up and it's blurry. So that's the Stockdale paradox from Good to Great, right? Really great business book. Retain the faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of difficulties, and at the same time, confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. Like, that's the way to be a leader right now, is we have faith, we will prevail, this too shall pass. There is no market that goes to zero. There is no economy that fully stops, right? There is opportunity economically through this. As a health scare, the virus, we will beat that, right? Like this too shall pass. And at the same time, what's the brutal fact? 6.7 million more, 10 million unemployed people in 2 weeks changes the economy. It changes the real estate market. That's the brutal facts. So once I accept that brutal fact as a leader, my job is to continuously empathize and facts, empathize and facts, empathize and facts, to bring people to reality. And what I've learned as a leader is that people have this like reality checkbox in their head. Maybe my checkbox is somebody has to come on the news and say we're officially in a depression or a recession. And then, oh my gosh, it's happening. Maybe it's my uncle who I always trusted tells me, okay, this is legit. Oh my gosh, it's lit. Maybe it's, I gotta wait for Gary Keller to say it. I don't know. Everybody's got a checkbox in their head of have we moved to the next market? What's the reality? So my job as a leader is to keep repeating fact of brutal reality. And the moment people label it as like, oh, that's negative or that's bad or that's good, then I like to go in and say, okay, well, watch out for that label, because that label may cause you to not take the next appropriate action. And the truth is, like, all the math says we're going into the next market, and the next market in real estate is a declining market. There's a book about it. A lot of people are talking about the tactics inside of that. And then the issue, the magic of that set of tactics and thought process is really like the speed in which you operate, right? So in other words, let's go back to math. I have a lot of closings right now. I should still have stuff from the old market. And if there's the early indicators of real estate, Josh Team, the president of KW, said this on Monday, the very early indicators of the real estate numbers show up to a 70% decline of the very early indicators of real estate. So that could translate May, June, maybe even into July, like a 70% decrease in income. So I need to prepare for little to no income, very low income, May, June, July, who know, so what I would do, mathematically speaking, is I would bank as much of the cash that's coming in right now, slash all my expenses, try and delay as many payments as I can. Even if I have the money to pay them, why not defer them if it's interest free, if that's an opportunity out there? Hold on to the cash, because the thing you don't know in the next cycle, there's two questions you don't know. Question one is how low will it go? Nobody knows that. And how long will it last? Nobody knows that. Those are the two things everyone wants to, nobody knows that. So my rule of thumb is, why not prepare for the lowest and the longest, and then, Stockdale, right? And then hope for the best. And worst case scenario is you have, extra money in your bank account. And because as humans, we have these different check boxes in our head of what's the brutal, when I accept the brutal reality. Unfortunately, there's a percentage of people that don't accept it until it's too late, right? My job as a leader is to be so repetitious, right? You already know that as a leadership concept is like repeat, 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 repeat. But understand, like there's businesses on the line, there's financial lives on the line, there's physical lives on the line, but we're talking about the economics right now. Financial lives on the line of our people not getting into reality. And the truth is, on the real estate market, usually the next cycle, by the way, so the declining cycle also has the highest NAR member count. So it's the hardest time to survive in real estate anyway, because transactions drop, people don't know it because they're looking at lag measures, and realtor count actually goes up because that trails behind. So it's the hardest season to make, and nobody knows how low and how long. So the whole game of survival, so to speak, is how do I make it through that? Because the next, on the bottom lasts technically a day from an economic standpoint, yet then it starts to go back up. That's the best market to be in. It's actually better than the peak, because agent count's the lowest at that point and transactions are higher, and most people don't have any money to invest in marketing and things like that to take market share. So the whole point is, how do I get through this to get to that? And those who make it to that do really, really well. So if I took any kind of economic crisis and I just expanded the timeline, you love that saying about you can be anywhere you want to be in 5 years, right? Everybody loves that saying. This is one of those. So like if you expand the timeline to 5 years and those last year or two is the run up, then you actually could be further in 5 years now than you could have been had this not happened economically. And I say all that just in economics. I don't want to downplay the virus. Obviously, that's the key to everything. So if you ever wanted to ballpark like how deep, how long, which you shouldn't do, the light at the end of the tunnel is more tied to the virus, not the stimulus, right? How deep and how long this thing lasts is about our battle versus the virus, not a stimulus. So you got to keep your eyes on that. All right, I just rambled a bunch. So what thoughts do you have?
I think that's awesome, Seth. And something I wrote down in really big letters is acceptance. And I think a lot of people have been asking me about that, because I'm in, a lot of I'm in recovery, and in recovery, acceptance is what it's all about. And I was talking to a friend last night, and we were talking about how we're just not like, it's not affecting us in a negative way. We're just in a really good space. And that's because we're able to get into acceptance a lot sooner, because that's what we've been taught in recovery. You know, when things happen, you get into acceptance, and then you get into the service of others, and you lean on God, and you do those three things. And, you know, so I think there is a huge thing to be said about recovery. I mean, about acceptance, because it's helping. It's the cornerstone of what helps people recover from seemingly hopeless places, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, and you know,
power.
a lot of people don't know, but I'm in recovery too. You know it, but a lot of people don't know it. And you're right. I mean, that's the key to everything, right? Is acceptance. And then there is, you know, a step forward of brutal reality. And then there is, you know, a service to others and connection to God. That's a key to everything. And so as a leader, my job, I got to be the first one to accept brutal reality. And it's not good or bad, it's the next market. The virus is, go ahead and call that one bad and sad and unfortunate. And the economics is the next cycle, right? It's like we had to go to the next cycle at some point. This is not the way we would have wanted to do it. And there is good in cycle changes. I mean, there's actually positive things that can happen for business. Yet the velocity of the drop is what concerns me, that people are now not accepting reality. So, right, kind of the leadership formula is, I accept reality. I got to take care of my mindset and my own like empathy, and be connected, hopefully, to something greater than myself that helps recalibrate that. And then with my people, step one is mindset, empathy, emotions. How you doing? Like, so a lot of at the beginning of our conversations are like, all right, how you guys doing? What's going through your mind? How you feeling? Like, what are you know what I mean? Like, we talk, you know, be honest, like, how you doing? And because we're all have those days, right? And then, okay, what does the data say? And we literally look at numbers. And then we attempt to interpret that data, only not to create a news story, but to create a response. So when the data says X, Y, Z, that fundamentally means how many of my data, like the data from today and unemployment, how many of my database got affected by that? How much of my pipeline got affected by that? Did I lose any buyers now because of unemployment? Do I have new sellers now because of unemployment, or potential people, right? You know, and then, or did they get mortgage relief or deferment through this? So then they're going to be later, right? Who needs help? Who needs support? Do they have what they need, right? Can I connect them with the right resources? So that it becomes a different response, right? And mathematically speaking, you know, this should pull buyers out. And then when you watch, you know, financing restrictions go up, that's another indicator. Banks are getting nervous, they're having liquidity issues, they raise credit score standards. That's another red flag, right, for the next cycle. So buyers get diminished, sellers start to increase. Now we have a buyer's market, right? This is how it works. So I got to start learning price reduction scripts. Now, you know, when we have the ability to do that, and I've got, like any shift, I got to quadruple my activities. Now it's very different because we're in a virtual world, right? Yet at some point I have to quadruple my connectivity, my activities, and my communication. We really have to go be the local economist of choice. The next like phase of news cycles, you're going to see it is going to be what happened in the real estate market. Like, we're watching virus, unemployment. Guess what's like number 3 or 4 in line of news stories? Housing market.
Yeah.
So we'll start to see that. I saw one today from Forbes. What is the coronavirus done in the housing market? Guess what? It was negative, and there was at least it showed numbers. A lot of these ones haven't showed numbers. They're like, well, nobody wants to let buyers in. Buyers don't want to go in the house. They're worried about getting the virus. This one said that, and then at the bottom had some numbers that went down. So I got to know how to handle that when I talk to my database. It's Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I read that article too. I understand that. You know what? That's the national news. The national news is like asking, what's the national temperature? There is some number that represents the temperature in the United States, but it's irrelevant to you and I. All we care about is what's the temperature here today. So let's talk about what the numbers are in your neighborhood. So
Well,
you get the right.
And Seth, that just, for some reason, that just connected the dots for me, is that when you get into acceptance, you get out of emotion, and then you're able to look at the facts in the news from a logical standpoint and not get consumed with the negativity and all of that. And now you can truly become the expert because of the lens that you're looking through.
Yes.
I mean,
our job is to consult consumers to make the best decision for themselves.
Yeah.
And not to make a decision for them, not to talk them in or out of anything, yet allow them to make the right decision. And if I'm in a weird emotion or an off emotion, then I'll miss the data that can equip them. And then now all I'll do is I'll respond to their emotion with my own. Mm-hmm. And that can go all over the place. So somebody asked me, do you tell people to wait or go? I say, I don't know. I equip them with the right decision based on what they're looking to do and let them make the right choice. Mm-hmm. What I won't do is let them say, here's what I read on Forbes.com yesterday about the national real estate market, so I'm making my decision on that. I won't let that happen. Mm-hmm. I absolutely won't let that, because it's not enough data. Mm-hmm. I'll say, here's what's happening in your neighborhood. Now make a decision, right? Does that make sense?
Total.
Yeah.
Who's got questions for Seth? I know some of you on this call do. We've got some leaders, some awesome leaders on here. Churchwell, Dahl, Mandy, Kayla, Denise, JJ. What you got?
I do. Any chance to ask Seth the question. So obviously what affects the housing market affects agents, which are our clients.
So she owns how many offices do you have in how many states? She's an independent TC.
8 states.
8
states. Offices and brokerages. Yeah. So my question right now, aside from keeping all the coordinators busy, loving on our clients, all of that, but very pointed, is when it comes down to, you start to see that 70% drop. When do we start looking at non-coordinator staff, like that salaried, director of ops, director of talent acquisitions? Like, should that be now, or because my goal is to hang on as long as we can, and at the same time, like, you got to protect the business itself? So
yeah, great question. Here's kind of my thought process on that. Number one, on waiting. Anytime you catch yourself waiting to make an adjustment, really consider not waiting, right? Because what happened is when cycles shift, there's a window of time that you can catch it when you make the right decision at the right time. Timing actually matters, in other words. Economically, it matters significantly sometimes. The velocity of this drop is so much faster than it looks. 10 million people that got pulled out of the workforce. It's probably more than that. That's the thing, is they probably had some computers shut down out of processing, right? Probably worse than that. So the velocity is so fast. I think the windows could be hours sometimes to make the right decision, not days or weeks. So just as a general rule, when you hear something, respond faster than you normally would in this, because the velocity of change is faster than it looks. Because we're still trying to save deals, right? That had to do with last market. Now with staff, I think that the key to the stimulus package was to curb you making that decision. So tap into every available resource you can there. I think it's a very good, wise thing to do. You can always give the money back. Some of it gets forgiven. So go crazy on that as a business owner. Take every dollar you can get to be able to help keep people in the workforce. Then I think the next decision is not necessarily straight cut or go. I would apply a new filter, and it is, can people's jobs change? In other words, like, the one interesting thing here, in a shift, people's job profiles actually change. Sometimes you take on 2 or 3 roles. Sometimes you, like, one of our companies would move from marketing-based prospecting enhanced to prospecting-based marketing enhanced, right? So profiles actually change. When you do this overlay that we've never been used to called virtual, like, you can't go out, like, you're shut down physically, job profiles really have to change. So the worst thinking would be 90 days from now, we're going to go back. Like, write a job profile, look at your entire organization as if it had to stay virtual for 6 more months and everybody wanted to stay. Then, or you were building a brand new transaction coordination company on less transactions to more people and how would you make it work? How would you rewrite the entire company? There's a great video circulating from Simon Sinek talking to his team the other day. I don't know if you've seen that. You can put a link or I'll put it on the Facebook.
Yeah.
You see that on Zoom, right? And it's brilliant what he says, particularly like the last 90 seconds. And like his perspective, he's talking to his team, his support team, about their jobs changing, them needing to find the opportunity in the new world. And one of the things he said is, I'm trying to figure out how I still do what I do with no stage.
Mm-hmm.
So think that way. Mm-hmm. So for every one of us and every one of the people you have, as a salesperson, I got to figure out how to be a realtor with no physical contact, right? If I can pull that off and go to the extreme. So your support staff needs to figure that out too. So I think the next step is to challenge them along with you of how do we have a different business in the new economy, and just call it that and pretend like it's permanent. And then if somebody or something doesn't fit, then it's probably time to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so powerful. So powerful.
Jobs have changed. All of our jobs have changed.
Every single, I love how you said that. Find the opportunity in the new world.
Yeah, and when you get to a place of like, okay, I don't know how long and how deep, what if it's really long and really deep? Mm-hmm. Then it's a new economy. It's a new world. And when I take on that, I creativity comes back. Mm-hmm. You know, there'll be 50 new companies that open from this. Mm-hmm. We hadn't thought of, right? So you could be part of that too.
Yeah. Amanda, did you have a question? And I'm going to make Ashley host. I have a 1 o'clock I have to jump on, and I need to be there a few minutes early. So I'm going to make Ashley the host. Seth, if you need to go, you go. But Amanda, I know you had a question. I want to be respectful of time too.
No, not so much a question. Not so much a question. It ties back to, and I think I've told you this a couple different times. 5 years ago, when I got into the business, your real conversation about resignation has always stuck with me. And so I feel like this is an opportunity to have that same conversation like you teach in career visioning. Here's the new job expectation. Here's a world we're living in. Here's the new job expectation. And some of this is going to be us figuring it out together. And yet, what are we going to do to work together in this? And great, now you're going to go and run with it. So enlisting them and getting buy-in, because it really is all hands on deck. So I think this is a great opportunity to have those conversations again.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And your most talented people, like, they'll figure it out. They might know a better way than all of us, right? So what if this was the new economy in the new world? Like, how would you crush it? How would we crush it? How would we be profitable? How would we be successful? How would we still grow?
Well, and then from a leadership perspective, I feel like that takes some of the onus off of you and puts it back on them, right? Because here's where we're at. Here's where we need to go. And guys, it's a decision. All hands on deck. Are we going to do whatever it is we need to do to push through this? Or if not, then as much as I like you, I accept your resignation, right?
Yeah. We're for people, you're going to see this, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll see a divergence. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you know, crowd A and crowd B, and right now they look very similar. And then we're probably right here right now, where some even stop showing up for these trainings, stop showing up for these conversations, kind of still in denial, still writing it out. But they look and sound the same right now. It's very difficult as a leader to figure it out. What you're looking for is like right about here is probably where we are, where they start implementing new ways and new tactics. Mm-hmm. And those that try to ride the old way, they're going to go like that. So now as a leader, by the way, that's going to happen too. There's going to be leaders still in denial that take that crowd down with them, and they'll go out of business. Like, we'll see more teams and whatnot go out of business than we ever have. And so we're like checking on everybody. Are you on team A or team B? Team A or team B? Team A or team B? Like, based on what you show up for and then how you implement. And then very quickly, we're going to have to reinvest our energy towards team A and go grab other team A players that were on the wrong boat. And you'll actually be able to go get better talent soon, but you will have to be ready to say goodbye to some folks that have chosen to go that path. Yeah. And we're right here right now, and you're going to see a great divergence.
Yeah, Seth,
Absolutely.
Andy asks, what, if any, conversations are happening around short sales or REO properties? Have you heard anything there?
I've heard agents behind the scenes talk a lot about wanting to go in that direction as like the next market at the moment. And it's probably wise. I mean, the only curveball, like plain Jane economics, like there's going to be a bunch of those. The only curveball would be the stimulus and the banks allowing some mortgage deferments and stuff like that. So in other words, like if as a betting person, an amateur economist, I wouldn't bet that the banks are going to act the same way they did last time. I think they learned their lesson. They got beat up bad. So even if there are a bunch of REOs, I think they'll even handle them differently. They'll be a little bit more streamlined. I think we'll see a lot more like loan modification and forbearance and forgiveness and easier short sale, that type of stuff before we get to foreclosure. However, the numbers might just be so big. There's going to be foreclosure and short sale. There's going to be. How big it is comparative to the depression numbers that we're seeing, like early indicators, it may not correlate the same as the last time, because I think banks will just act differently or do it differently. I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else have questions for Seth before we hop off of here? Amanda, I saw you join. Amanda Light, I saw you join us.
Amanda Light, do you have a flow?
I had a last minute cancellation and I saw Seth Campbell and Brinley and you guys, and I'm like, I'm going to see what I'm missing. So
Well,
I missed it.
I can watch the whole thing.
I will.
I was just coming on to find out if anybody had a Flowbee that I can borrow.
Nobody knows what that is.
You have to tell us what it is. I have no idea what that is.
Millennials don't know what a Flowbee is. You have to Google that.
Just, yeah, Google it. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Seth. This was great. We appreciate your time. And everybody as well. Thank y'all.
My pleasure. Love you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.